Are we recording now?
Yep.
Dave should have given me more prep time. You can just cut this out after the fact.
No, we'll leave it in.
Okay. Actually, yeah, we will leave it in. You know what? It's kind of funny. Okay.
Special edition. No, they have to pay an extra $100 for this special.
Yeah, on the Patreon. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cudi Cast. I am your host, Damian Arasato, and the other host. You can introduce yourself.
Aryan Kumar.
And then we have a third host, but he does not happen to be here. And his name is... What do you think you want to go by? We'll just go by James Robin. We'll just call him James Robbins. So, this is a podcast about Kid Cudi, Mr. Solo Dolo, Mr. Rager, any other name you might know him by. That one guy that said day and night that I'm sure you heard on your iPod in 2007. But this is a podcast mostly about kind of analyzing Kid Cudi and discussing his musical legacy and other such things that are associated with him, such as Kids See Ghosts, his history as a musician, and discussing topics that relate to his, such as, mental health and other things such as that. Today, I figured just as an introduction to it, because this will be the first episode, which I'm not sure what the update schedule will look like, and I'm going to need to make a Twitter and Instagram about it, which I will do shortly after recording this. I think that this will be a very good podcast, much in the vein of Watching the Throne and other such podcasts about music.
I can confirm that it'll be the best podcast number one in the world.
Well, let's introduce ourselves. You know what? You go first. You go first, Arian.
Okay, so just name, and I mean they already know my name, so just
what
just
I do about yourself, Yeah.
Okay, no, I'm not interested in it. Just a guy who makes music in his room, who's been very lonely and uses I use Cudi's music to kind of remedy that mostly. I've Man on the Moon 2 on vinyl. That's probably and The Ghost on vinyl.
I have Man on the Moon 1 and 2 and Kids Ghost on vinyl, and Yay, and the Sir.
I mean, yeah, it's a $15 vinyl is like a no-brainer to buy. I'm in college. I guess that's kind of interesting. I'm second year. The basic Indian major, which is engineering. Simple shit.
I'm Damian Arsato, obviously, as we know. You can just call me... Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if you just called me Ari for the rest of the podcast if you're going to refer to me, either one of you. So you can just call me Arsato or Ari. I don't really care. Not many people call me by my first name. But I am a writer. I also do some minimal production, but it's all GarageBand shit. So I don't even want to call myself a producer because it's like joke music that I kind of make as it's just kind of a pastime because I find it funny to do. But I have a large interest in writing styles and, video games and music and all kinds of stuff. I tend to look at a lot of things like art and I tend to analyze it a lot, which is why I wanted to start this podcast, actually. It's because I enjoy analyzing the music of Kid Cudi and Kanye West, and actually most musicians in general. I just find that those two artists have a lot of depth within them, considering they mostly make concept albums, much like Pink Floyd. and other bands like that. Prog rock, I mean. But I have a very large interest. Well, I'm repeating myself a little bit. You might notice that I do that. Um, but I have a very large interest in kind of psychology and stuff like that, and kind of looking at mental health as a whole. I hope that through the work of both this podcast and my own personal work in writing, that I can sort of make something that people would enjoy and find some solace in. Mostly feeling like they're understood. I mean, obviously, this is a Kid Cudi podcast, but in the same breath, um, Kid Cudi tends to focus on mental health a lot, which mental health is a very something I hold very dear to myself because, not only struggling with the minimal depression that I do, and I know that many others do, I also have a lot of friends who deal with it as well. And I hope that kind of feeling like you're understood in your mental health is something that can kind of make people feel like they understand it and like they're more understood. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I think where we should go with this first episode is mostly an introduction because we don't want to keep it too long. Um, I feel like we should kind of go into like how did we find about Kid Cudi? Like what's our history of being a fan of his and what our favorite album is or favorite song or something like that.
Yeah, sure. So it started way back like 2012 or 2013, around that time. I just stumbled upon Day and Night like a fucking normie, and it caught my attention, and from there I didn't really dive into into his discography from there. It was many years later because I think back then I didn't even start listening to music seriously until about 2015, to be honest. And I mostly it was just like I'd listen to a couple songs on YouTube and maybe download them using YouTube to MP3 converters to
I
my
know about
phone and just
those.
listen to them on the way to school and stuff. Because I didn't have an iPod because my parents we were pretty. I was not poor but not rich either.
Mhm.
Not that you have to be rich to have an iPod, but my parents didn't want me having too much stuff, so it was just one kind of really old Samsung Sony phone. And so it worked for what I needed to do. It got the YouTube downloads on deck. So it was mostly just a bunch of loose songs, and no concept of albums even kind of came across me until 2 years later. And then I was like, I listened to Dan. I was like thinking, I listened to Kid Cudi and Eminem a lot. So let me download their albums and kind of see what they're about. And that's how I got into all the Two Men on the Moon's Indicud. And I think that was all that was out at that point.
Mm-hmm.
There was also Satellite Flight, but I didn't have download that one until later. And from there, I kind of got introduced to many other hip hop acts like Kanye West and Kendrick Lamar. The first Kendrick verse I heard was actually Solo Dolo Part 2, which I think most people aren't introduced to Kendrick that way. And yeah, that's just how I dove into his entire discography, and then kind of kept up with him. Found out about Speeding Bullet to Heaven. That took a really long time to grow on me, and I still wouldn't say it's great, but I wouldn't hate it as much as everyone else does. Mm-hmm. And then I read about him getting into rehab, which was around my senior year of high school, and just kind of for a little bit, it kind of hit me like this guy who made music for so long and talks about all of this stuff, he's still suffering from it to this day. And I was just kind of thinking, what hope does that have for anyone? And I didn't have clinical depression or anything, but just kind of, it was more on the lighter ends of things where I did go to therapy and stuff. And I was just thinking that if he can't make it, then what chance do I have? But then he got out of rehab and released Passion Pain. And hey, I don't know. And then Kids See Ghost came out, and that just seeing him smile on Coachella the other day and seeing how far he's come is just such a beautiful thing to notice. I can word that better, but I think people get what I'm saying.
I suppose honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if I take over kind of the role as the MC of this podcast. But what do you find so appealing about his music, I suppose? Because you did kind of delve into that, but I suppose why do you find his music so interesting? Like how does it resonate with you?
Yeah, I think you said this earlier. It's more of like it's not really like it's this massive. Oh, look, he's telling this long story over the course of all of his songs. It's more like he's creating a moodscape of sorts,
Hmm.
and it's just something you can kind of get lost in. And I mean, there are some lyrical moments where you can kind of you can feel exactly like trapped in my mind and all along, and erase me and stuff.
Ghost.
More of the yeah, Ghost as well. A bunch of other songs. Like I can go on a list of all soundtrack to my
Of
life.
course. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, like there's not a shortage of songs where he gets lyrically complex or not complex, but you know, just kind of
His
gets
emotions
lyrically
can
connects. Yeah, these emotions come out really well.
they're conveyed very well.
And even in the songs where his lyrics are kind of repetitive and they're kind of basic, you can still feel it in the production that he chooses.
Right.
It's still you can still kind of feel the emotion that he's trying to show you, and I don't know, it's just something that really connects. It's something that either you connect with or you don't, and that's why he has such a like aggressive and powerful fan base is because everyone connects to it.
Well, what's your favorite album? I guess I'll ask.
Man on the Moon 2, Man on the Moon 1 is it's a very close second, very close, like decimal points difference there.
Yeah. I feel you there. I suppose I'll get into mine. I don't mean to rush you too along, and I don't want to feel this like it's very segmented, but at the same time, I don't want this to be a
No, it's fine.
particularly long
Yeah, I
episode.
feel like I'll end up just repeating myself over and over if I
Right,
kept on.
right. Well, I okay. Where do I start with this? Of course, I heard Day and Night a long time ago when I was like a small child. Like I remember, it used to play on the radio a little bit. And then I remember during a period when I was like 12, 13, and I didn't really listen to many music at all. I actually listened to like a weird, I used to listen to very specific, like songs from very specific artists to get a very specific mood out of them. Like, like during that period, which I don't know if I'll ever get into in this podcast or whatever, but it was a very interesting period in my life where I was kind of going through a lot and kind of starting to mature and stuff. And I kind of wanted to feel like sometimes like started to gauge my emotions and feel them more and allow myself to feel them. And I do remember listening to Day and Night a little bit during that period of time, but I never listened to any other Kid Cudi songs other than that because I didn't really listen to artists and I didn't really listen to mainstream culture at all. Like I didn't really listen to the radio. But I do recall I used to be really interested in like concept albums and I used to listen to a lot of rock and metal. And I really liked listening to Pink Floyd in particular. And I really liked that concept album thing. And I remember near the end of actually 2018, which makes me a very recent Cudi fan, but at the same extent, I tend to really delve into a lot of artists whenever I get into them. And I was listening to David Bowie at the time, and I started to listen more to like Frank Ocean, and I started to get more into like rap and hip hop and R&B stuff. And I got into Kanye West, and I heard Kid Cudi, and I'm like, okay, I know who Kid Cudi is. I feel like I should listen to his albums because he's a renowned hip hop artist and he makes concept albums. So I listened to Man on the Moon 1, and I'm like, damn, this is really good. Like I didn't quite. I felt like I didn't understand it as well as I do now, but I certainly heard it. I'm like, this album's actually kind of a classic. Like I knew that it was something significant. And so it wasn't until a little while later that I really delved into his discography. But after listening to all of his albums, I knew that Kid Cudi was definitely one of those artists that had this certain resonance with people because of the way that he conveys his emotion through both sound and like lyricism. Of course, his lyricism might not be as complex or as like emotionally heavy as maybe like Kanye can be at certain times, or as certain other artists, especially not lyrically. He's not the most lyrical artist. I'm not going to lie to you. Like he's not spitting bars like Kendrick here, but he definitely knows how to convey his feelings that he personally has in a very well way, especially combined with the production of his tracks. And so listening to albums like Man on the Moon 2, which I'll just skip to the chase here and just say that that's definitely my favorite album of his. I feel like it's certainly a skill that not many artists have, and I really appreciate Kid Cudi for it. And it resonates with me as it does with many other people, kind of feeling like a loner, like you don't have somebody that understands how you feel. And Kid Cudi, as many people will say, it feels like you have somebody who understands. He feels, to me personally, almost like a big brother. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not just saying that because he says it, but it really does feel like an older person who understands how you feel and gives you some sort of motivation to get through it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
I wouldn't necessarily say I have clinical depression or anything like that, but I've definitely had my depressed periods, and I've had my issues with mental health and just like getting through things. Like I've had dark thoughts before, as I think most people have, but I feel like Kid Cudi has as well, and like he knows what it's like. And so, kind of going through this discography just kind of naturally, I feel like each album definitely tells this little mini story that kind of connects to the next because it correlates to his period in life, kind of like how Kanye tells these little stories through his album that really reflect a period of his life. I feel like that really goes well with Kid Cudi as well. Like I'm not the biggest fan of Indica, but it certainly does feel like he was trying to achieve that rock star status. And while he might not have that certainly huge rock star status, he has this cult following that that many games or not games that many artists don't have. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah,
so,
very
even an
rare.
album like Speeding Bullet to Heaven, which has this very what's the word? It has a very infamous reputation. I almost felt like this like I remember listening to it for the first time, or not even like I remember like having it, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to listen to this yet. Like I feel like it's going to be really dark, and like I eventually listened to it, and it wasn't as scary as I thought it was. But I was like sitting there, and I'm like, it almost felt like this taboo album, like like it was really dark and personal. And then I finally got over that kind of stigma towards it, and I really kind of enjoy the album for what it is. It's a pure artistic, what's the word here, expression, which
Yeah,
is it's nice to have as well as polished artistic. um,
it's like having a panic attack, and it's just you screaming at the wall, and that's the whole album.
right, well, I wouldn't even say it's a panic attack. It's more just an expression of all these dark
Yeah,
moody thoughts that you've had for a long period, and it's kind of expressing that. And I feel like having that pure artistic expression, that you aren't worried about commercial, um what's the word I'm trying to hear, like how commercial it is or how well it sells. I feel like that's important to get to the next more perfectly composed albums such as Passion, Pain, and Demon Slaying, and getting more like sometimes you need that outlier to return back to the form. If you know what I'm saying. So, anywho, like I do have, as a very recent Cuddy fan, I feel like I've had a lot of great moments just with him as a more recent fan. Like even just like Camp Flognaw, seeing him being so happy to see him perform was amazing, honestly. And then seeing that interview he had with Jaden Smith and the rest of them. If you remember, do you know what I'm talking about?
yeah,
It was very early this year, I believe, and that was really good to see as well. And seeing him on SNL was honestly really great as well. Like I actually own the sweatshirt that Cactus Plant Flea Market sold. That sweatshirt that was just very overpriced.
yeah,
Seeing that was great, and then seeing him at Coachella, watching him live for the first time, other than Camp Flognaw, was a really great experience for me. And even like just that picture where he's like holding on to Kanye while he's crying, that's very very recent from the Sunday service on Easter. Was I feel like almost like it's an iconic moment that wrote itself. And so while I might be
yeah,
more recent in an experience, I do feel like you don't necessarily need to be a fan of a person for a long time to understand them or to enjoy them to the extent that some other people who might be longer fans might enjoy them. Huh.
yeah. You really don't. It's mostly just gatekeepers who feel like that.
Yeah, but just fucking gatekeepers, dude. You see so many of them in like the metal community, it's not even funny. Um,
Yeah, they're
so
everywhere.
yeah, no doubt about it. I do hope that this podcast is enjoyable for many people and that we get sort of some kind of following out of it. Because I feel like nobody else is really doing a Kid Cudi podcast, which, yes, there is another Kid Cudi podcast. But in the same breath, I feel like we can get a little more
Jesus, we're already
audience.
starting beef.
Well, we already have a better name than them because I don't know what their name, but I just remember being like Kid Cudi podcast. Like we have Cudi Cast, like dude, that's like easily more iconic.
And
And I
we have better art.
Yeah, and we have a fan. Well, we already kind of have an inherent fan base just because of because of the people we know,
Yeah,
and
because
so
like
yeah,
like
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
already pretty famous. Like if you don't know my name, what the fuck are
Yeah,
you
like come
doing?
on, man. Well, no, I feel like we can definitely get something out of this because I feel like people really want something more Kid Cudi focused. Because I mean, even browsing like the subreddits for Kid Cudi, it's definitely not nearly as busy as the Kanye subreddit, and it feels like there's not many outlets for Kid Cudi fans to really enjoy. Because while there are fan accounts and stuff, they're not nearly as active or as like large as Kanye stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. And then like especially the GQ interview was a great
Oh yeah, I remember the
dive into
GQ
this whole
interview.
thing. They just asked him about Kanye songs.
Yeah,
They
that's
asked him
kind of
about
annoying.
all of the lights. Like
Dude, like yes, he has a like yes, I love his little bridge that he has, but like he has way more
that's
songs than that. Like,
like
did they even ask him about Gorgeous? Like, come on, man.
what
Or
about
Welcome
50
to
Ways to Make a
Heartbreak?
Record?
Well, like even if they
Yeah,
broke up with
if they
Kanye and
had to
stuff,
do
it's
it
like, come
Kanye,
on,
yeah, definitely.
like come on, man. Like, do Welcome to Heartbreak or Gorgeous? Like, those two songs are easily a lot better or more iconic than All of the Lights. I mean, yes,
Yes,
his All of the
for
Lights bridge is
Cudi,
big, but nobody really talks about it nearly as much as like his hook on
exactly.
Gorgeous or like his very first breakout, which would have been well, other than Day and Night, his very first breakout would have been on Welcome to Heartbreak. There would have been many
Oh,
who's
yeah.
like obviously other than Day and Night, I feel like that was definitely an introduction for many people because Kanye West was a much larger artist than he was because he hadn't even released Man on the Moon 1. He only put out a kid named Cudi at that point.
Yeah,
So yeah,
and
I
it's
don't know.
and
I
it's a
think this
fucking
should take
amazing.
off. Right as soon as we finish this podcast, I'm going to start making a Instagram and Twitter and give the login information to you guys as well.
I'm gonna
And
start
then,
posting porn on there.
yeah, okay, that sounds great. I do think when the third host comes back, like we might have a little more charisma and a little more entertainment, but I'm not sure what our next episode is yet. We'll have to figure it out, and we'll let you guys know. Um, um, we'll we'll update you guys on what the Twitter and Instagram will be, but assume that it's going to be something involving CuddyCast. So I
Yeah,
won't link them
it's
yet because
available.
I haven't made them yet, which I should have done before we did this, but that's okay. And I'll make intro music as well. So yes, sounds great.
Yeah, so basically episode 2 is the real start.
As a real start, yeah, because hopefully we'll have the other host as well. I'm Arasato.
So, I'm Ariane.
This is the CuddyCast.
Until
Goodbye.
next time.
Are you going to
Goodbye.
stop recording, or
Yeah, definitely.
did he stop yet?
No, no. I forget the commands.
Oh my god! Cut this part out.